to Merchant Seeds Cup of Joe. On this episode, hear a summary of this week's field scouting, meetings, travels, and weather. Ben shares a crop outlook map from the Crop Protection Network compiling different crop issues and diseases in counties into one map. We talk about why scouting crops is critical during the growing season. And Dylan shares test weight results for our Peyton 2, Maddie 3, and Julie 12 wheat.
Welcome to Merchant Seeds Cup of Joe. Today we got Lynn and Dylan, and it's been a busy week traveling. Let's start off with you, Lynn. Where have you been this week?
Yeah, so Dylan and I went out to Indianapolis this week and attended a meeting for seed companies and was able to take some different paths to some areas and check some stuff out on the way out. And I would say overall, kind of a bleak outlook out there. So when you get across the river down in the bottoms, there's a little bit of ponding. Get on between, I would say, Oquawka and Monmouth, and it looked kind of hit and miss, kind of similar to where we're at here. But on the other side of Monmouth, it really turned pretty ugly and stayed that way all the way to the Indiana State line. Indiana State line kind of looks like the haves and have-nots, what I would assume would be early plant, especially corn that was able to get in early, get rooted down. I will call it fair. I wouldn't call it excellent. Call it fair. But a lot of unevenness out in the fields. Starting to see a lot of water-related stress. I'm assuming beans went anaerobic at some point in time. Some of it looks like it's had maybe 2, if not 3 instances of going anaerobic. So probably went anaerobic at planting because there's just no beans in the holes. By Farmer City, there's still 1 to 2 acre lakes out in fields. Some replant looks like it got done, flooded again, and then out in the field, I mean, you could just see the tile lines just showing up clear as day, nice dark green. I would assume 1 to 2 vegetative stages ahead of the stuff that's beside it, and just puke green, really just absolute puke green soybeans, and so. Once again, small sample size taken. I mean, a long trip, but small sample size looking out there. But both corn and beans are definitely feeling the wrath of some water stress. I stopped in Bloomington and had a meeting on the way back home. During that meeting, they had between 1/4 to 1.5 inches in about 15 to 20 minutes, which adds insult to injury with some of those guys over there with already being wet, trying to get weed out. So very frustrating from my perspective to see that widespread of crop conditions. But if there was a caveat, came home, pulled in the driveway, and got to look out across the field and say, "Oh, we're not that bad." So guys here locally, and it's kind of wild. I mean, when I say locally, I mean Lee, probably southern Henry County. You get it further north, they're dealing with water issues related to that same kind of line of storms that hit that Monmouth area. And then obviously we've talked a lot previously about the trials and tribulations of Missouri. But the Mississippi's up. The Illinois is up big time and running hard. The Wabash was, I would say it's within its banks, but it was pretty close to looking like it was coming out. And maybe it did go out and it's kind of receding a little bit. But the guys further south watching, I would say hold on, because these river levels are going to be interesting as we continue to travel through. But Mr. Weatherman over there in your dome of death coming up, we'll see how that dries things out or doesn't dry things out here as we move forward.
Anything else that you noticed?
I would just say even the beans have been kind of yellow, that color for, I would say, week and a half, 2 weeks, but now you can really start to see corn when you're driving everywhere where the water went. It's stunted. It's really yellow. I mean, it's not just in beans now. You're really starting to see it in corn where water stood or where water's flowing down to a waterway or something. You can really, really see that.
Yeah, so if our listeners are looking out their back door and they're not liking what they're seeing, misery loves company.
Correct. Yep. From a management standpoint, though, seeing that kind of stuff, I fielded a few questions on what do I do. I mean, the easiest would be is if you had access to some kind of drone application and could have a dry spreader on it, use a urea, Amida style product and hit those spots, or there's some products that are out there now. It's not an endorsement, but just one that comes to mind, that line in from Tidal Grow, It's encapsulated urea, I believe, that was able to be a very available form through the leaf surface on corn. Might be worth a trial on using that and being able to hit those specific spots within the field. The problems that we're seeing, like on my own acres, I'm having similar problems, not to the extreme that they have, but you gotta, for a ground rig, you gotta be able to get across it. Yeah. And we are just in a cycle of where sprayed beans yesterday wasn't probably great to run the rig across, but we're to the point where beans needed sprayed. And I would say that's the other thing. As soon as there's probably even a smidgen of a semblance in these areas to get herbicide application done, it really needs to get done bad, really bad. But you just can't. We have remedies, but you can't do it because the ground conditions aren't conducive. And right now, with the way that prices are, mass treating a whole field, I'm not sure that's the most prudent either. As we're moving through this, so it's really a kind of a catch-22 right now. On there's agronomic advice, but then there's probably an ROI standpoint that we have to take into consideration, because some of this stuff, I think some of the stuff like here locally, it's salvageable. Like, are we gonna see a consistent, on the marginal acre with the terrace bottoms? I mean, you're gonna run 200 across all the way across the field? Probably not, but I think you can manage the lows still. There are some spots out there in Illinois, though. I think managing the lows is that ship might be sailing pretty quick, because that corn was really going backwards quick. Yeah. And that's going to be the fight this fall. And not to influence. We have no influence over markets, but I think that's going to be a common sentiment that we're going to hear is the corn that's going to be good and the good spot, well-drained spot in the field, probably still has really great potential, but you're going to fight. You're going to be subjected to your APH is going to be subjected to what your lows are, whether that's 50, 60, 100, 200. That's probably going to be the story of the year moving forward. But hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully I can snap out of it, but I'm not holding my breath on that.
Well, this reminds me of, and I don't remember what year that Souder came out with his Y drops, or he patented and got the Y drops rolling, but they had a really wet year that year in Illinois, and I think that might have been 2016 or 2015.
That sounds right.
One of those 2 years, and that was the year that there was a lot of yellow corn, very similar to what you're talking about here, and getting in late and adding nitrogen late was 50, 60 bushel per acre yield advantages. So if you pay attention to what the weather is going to do, hopefully the massive torrential downpours are going to slow down a little bit. We're going to get some heat. Hopefully it doesn't last too long. But those areas potentially could still be salvaged with 40, 50 pounds of nitrogen and, targeted applications like what you're talking about, just going after and spending the money where the money needs spent rather than the areas that look good. So
yeah, that's where the advantage is going to be with the Y drop is, when we talk about drone or even airplane application, volume is your friend and also your enemy. But you just, at this point, when some of these spots, we just need volume. We need a lot of volume.
Yep. So I was west across southern Iowa this week, and similar stories. Some crops look great, some crops look wet, just depends on how the field drains. And I also went south, and it's kind of the similar story. I was in Fairfield, Illinois this past week, and there's pockets that look pretty decent, and there's pockets that have seen too much moisture. So there's a bean planter out in the field trying to get double crops planted, and there's a four-wheel drive tractor hooked onto the front of the planter trying to get him drug out of the field. So trying to
tandem planting out there.
Tandem planting. I there wasn't a planter when I was on my way home, so I think they called her quits on that round. A little bit of rutted up fields out that direction. Okay, so with all the moisture and the environments that we had, I had an email come across my desk this week from the Crop Protection Network. It's actually from Iowa State, but leading me to the Crop Protection Network. The Crop Protection Network now basically, like, we bring up those tar spot maps. We bring up the red crown rot and soybeans map. We bring up the southern rust. So they basically compiled all of those maps, and they have tabs where you can highlight what you're looking for, and it'll show you the different counties. So basically, rather than having to go to each individual map, they have everything counted in one spot. And it also made it easy to you could submit reports all on that page too. And there's a whole bunch of things that you can go in and submit for. The selection shortcuts that are going to be the most common that guys are going to hit on are frog eye, soybean rust, southern blight, leaf hopper in corn, southern rust in corn, tar spot in corn, stripe rust of wheat are the ones that they have issued there. But you can also browse by crop. So if you click corn, it'll show up all of the corn-related incidences that have popped up. Then you can click on the county, and it'll tell you what it's looking for. You can browse by issue type, which would be disease, insect, things of that nature. Then you can also browse by specific issues. So I think this is going to be a handy tool for agronomists and growers that are really intent on scouting and getting out there and reporting what's actually out there, so that other people can see around you and get you a better idea about what's going on in the area. But there's things on here that I don't even like. Cotton leaf roll dwarf virus and cotton,
you know that.
No, I don't spend a ton of time doing that kind of thing. They even have like flood damage of soybean. They have
that map might be pretty expansive.
Well, I don't think anybody's reported on that one yet. I haven't spent a ton of time clicking around here, but just a lot of different things that guys would have the ability to report on and give other agronomists in other areas good ideas of what they're actually seeing. So I thought that was a very, very cool tool there. So when you go to the Crop Protection Network, you click on their tools button. It's not in the resources, it's in the tools button, and it's called the Crop Outlook. So I thought that was a neat little thing that they had rocking and rolling there.
Yeah, and that tar spot map, that's an interesting map this year because listening to Ag PhD over the years, they've always been fielding questions, but South Dakota, parts of Nebraska hasn't really been affected by tar spot like we have here in Iowa and Illinois. And if you check out that map, not the case anymore. Nebraska is, I would say right now, if it hasn't changed, Nebraska last time I looked at it was definitely the hotbed of homegrown tar spot. So definitely, if you're viewing this and you're in an area that hasn't been subjected to tar spot, it's coming. And luckily, we've got enough management tools in our repertoire to be able to manage that.
Yep. And circling back around just one more minute, I see a lot of things on social media talking about yellow beans. Do you want to spend a minute talking about why the beans are yellow and what it's not?
Why are the beans yellow right now? That's a loaded question.
Well, I guess what I'm getting at is I've seen different agronomists, different retailers talk about, it's this disease, or it's that disease, or it's this deficiency in.
And there's probably, if we take the 30,000 foot view, there's probably some accuracy to a little bit of everything that everyone is saying. But when we're looking at, like in our area right now, probably most areas that what we're seeing is, I would venture to guess that there is we've made the nodules, or most beans at this point, because we're kind of in a unique spot where after the summer solstice, we're probably, you said the stuff down in the fertilizer plant is R3. And so we're in the R stages of probably most of the planted soybean stage. We've got nodulation production. You get this wet. The Bradyrhizobia, unfortunately, are not anaerobic. They require oxygen. When we get wet and sustained wetness, that's detrimental. Even worse is when we get wet and we're flooded. We push all that air out of the soil. Essentially, our nodulations, it ceases to exist. Root growth stops. So most of the stuff that I see right now is probably back to that. We're losing our nodules. We're not having our nitrogen production. We're, for lack of better terms, almost suffocating this plant out. Depending on who you talk to, kind of weather related, we can snap back out of that 10 to 28 days if the weather starts to cooperate. But for the most part, I mean, it's a nodulation issue. There's some rescue techniques out there that people talk about related to nitrogen and doing that. I've heard guys go out with AMS and even some potash in a mix and try to get that going again. The problem is it takes a lot. And then so now you're balancing the economics to it. So I mean, I don't all the beans that I've looked at, no disease pressure. I mean, it is all from the soil going anaerobic for, we're probably working on 48-hour period 3 times now over the last 2.5, 3 weeks for most of these areas. So I've heard of guys, and I think it would be really unique. Do you got any beans on irrigated? They're actually, heard guys in Nebraska are going out and using a liquid inoculant back through their pivots to try to get that recharged and going again. But yeah, I mean, there's stress mitigating products that we like to use. Some of it too that I think it's a double whammy, and I would assume that most of, like in our area, we're into this. We're wet. We have that already going for us, and now we're going in with a herbicide application to boot. So we're asking that plant to metabolize and be under stress while it's trying to handle a different stress. So moral of the story here is we're going to look at ugly beans for probably the better part of 2, if not 3 weeks. Granted, there's some heat coming, and that's going to help us out. But you know, in our limited time here and looking at it, I mean, that to me, the 21 to 28 days is probably the more accurate number, given how our season kind of goes through. You and I talked about it before. Yeah, does it take away the top end yield? Potentially. Do we miss out on a node? But it amazes me. We see it now. We've seen it, probably 3 or 4 times in our career so far of doing this. Come September, we have belly button high beans, 19 nodes plus branching. The beans, they get out of it and they get going and they compensate, and they'll be okay if the weather cooperates on the backside.
Nope, I'd rather have it 2 weeks ago, but this is less detrimental than if we were having these same conditions at Podville.
Correct. So, and we've seen it too, where if you go out and look, I mean, that's the thing that why scouting is so critical, especially in beans and corn with these weather stresses. If you start looking at the plants, they're stacking those nodes. So you're not going to have potentially as tall of a plant, maybe not, but you start doing the counts on where you're at on your trifoliates or your node spacing on your corn. It's uneven, but we're still growing.
Yep.
It's not like the stuff is going stagnant.
For sure. Nope, I just had a couple different phone calls on the yellow beans, and I've heard potassium deficiency. I've heard different diseases out there. I'm like, no,
well,
it's just.
I'm gonna be a little bit of a, I won't say duh, but if we have the mass flow option of with our roots with that much water, but at a certain point, we are going to be deficient when the roots are dying or there's no uptake. It gets to the point where, yeah, we might show, I got a hillside that's that way. It might be, you might see a little bit of that, but it's related back to it's just not uptaking anything. There's nothing there to do it. Or in that particular spot, maybe your calcium level is a little bit low and it's under stress, and you're having an imbalance of that stress is magnifying that imbalance, and the calcium is keeping the potassium from being uptook into that plant. But it's all back to that. Well, the stress of the weather of
right. And 99% of the acres that we're looking at that are yellow don't have yellowing around the outside.
Correct.
They're a bleached out yellow, highlighter green looking bean field. So I just wanted to dispel some of those phone calls that I've gotten. Next thing on the list that I had here, Dylan, we have had wheat harvest coming in. Our seed production down south is done. It's in the bin. Talk a little bit about the different test weights that we're looking at and how the yields have been so far.
Yeah, so I'll start down south first, since that's where they've been done for a week and a half, 2 weeks already. So our Julie down there, it did really well, over 120 acres, ended up doing right around that 87 range. But the test weight was fantastic. Came in at 61 up to here at West Point, and then they are kind of referencing the same thing down there. Really good standability with that product, even with some of the winds and the weather that they had. So the Julie did fantastic this year. No complaints there. Let me go to the Maddie, which was earlier than would have been earlier than the Julie 12. It was all in that 60 range again, and it did even better. It was in the 90s for that grower, over 300 acres, so it did fantastic there. So we didn't have any weather issues, like events when it was ready to harvest, like we're fighting up here locally. So when we get up here locally, we're fighting weather again. It seems like that's just everything wheat has been ready for a week and a half in some areas, and it's been causing a little bit of issue on some of our test weight. It's nothing horrific yet, but it's getting to that point where if we keep catching these half-inch rains that we're getting every 3-4 days, we're going to be losing almost, I would say, point of test weight, for each rain. It just is constantly swelling, and it's then drying back out. And hopefully the weather looks maybe promising after we get out of filming here on Friday. Hopefully from here on out we look fairly decent. We're going to ramp up in heat, so that'll help dry it out. Because it seems like at night we're getting such, the dew point, we're dewing so heavy at night.
Yep.
Then we can't get in till 2-3 o'clock, and we're done at 6 o'clock because the dew starts coming up again. So it's been a really challenging window. But the test weights are all floating around on the early sand that probably should have been cut week and a half, 2 weeks ago. It was in the low 57 range, but now the guys that maybe were titched later, we're in that 58, 59 range. So I mean, we're about average right now. Last year we saw heavier test weights, but you go and compare, the seasons that we had, they're completely different. We were able to get in. It was a little bit later in the year. We were about July 4th. I mean, we're a week probably ahead right now, but we could have been pushed up a little bit more. So there's nothing like too crazy to worry about on test weights, but if we keep catching these rains, it's really going to hurt.
Yeah, and 58 pound test weight still makes awesome quality seed.
Oh, yeah.
So it's still going to germ out
Quality
90s or above. So we're not concerned about that, but it's
Nope.
definitely something that guys, if you're fighting the wheat, take the bird in hand. If you can get it in a bin, get it dried down.
Yeah, just for a grower's perspective, you look at your scale tickets, it's like, oof, I'm used to that 60, but we just need to rethink about our, the season that we had. It's still very good quality. Yields are exceptionally well for kind of the year that I thought we were going to be going into, just how wet we were late season. It seems like right now the Peyton across the acres that have been cut, I'm guessing we're probably around that 92, 93 range, and then not much Maddie's been off yet, but it's coming off soon.
Yeah, no, I was adding scale tickets up because we raised a little bit of the Maddie, and I'm going to guess we're going to be in the mid to upper 90s for total averages, and that's on some pretty light dirt too. So
Yeah, somebody sent Mother Nature the wrong date for the Lee County Fair. We're getting our fair rain right now, so.
that's right. I have seen up here in the north some late March planted corn completely tasseled out, so that means we're probably July 10th through the 15th for probably closer to the 10th for tassel time around here. So guys need to continue to scout, look for the tar spot, look for the southern rust, be on top of things. From that perspective, the earlier planted soybeans through first flower on June 17th this year. So we're progressing very quickly. Some of these beans, like to your point, even some of the May planted beans, we need to get the herbicides finished up because we're going to start knocking flowers off if we're hammering these with.
It'd be off label.
Right, and it'd be off label as well. So we can spray Enlist through on Enlist E3 soybeans. You can spray Enlist through R1 up to R2, which would be R1 is any flower on the plant. R2 is a flower at the top third or top fourth node. So keep in mind on what the label is there. Liberty, basically we have till we see first flower before it's off label. So keep an eye on that as well. So
You mentioned a tar spot. I just wanted to add one. I saw it a little bit on some corn scouting yesterday. It's a bacterial leaf spot, the Holcus spot. Don't get that confused with tar spot pustulation. It's bacterial. You can't do anything about it, but it's just a little small white speck that you might see on the top side of the leaf there, but nothing too crazy. And don't, especially if you spray it, if you got later corn, don't confuse potentially some slight herbicide damage, or if you top dress with a dry product, some of that burn. Don't confuse any of that with tar spot. Make sure that you're giving her the rub and no fly poop, and it's actual pustule and not just some other external problem there.
Yep, because tar spot will give you a lesion on both the top and bottom side of the leaf in the exact same spot. So that's a pretty easy way if you don't want to be licking fly poop like Lynn does. So
Protein.
The last thing that I had is corn rootworm take 680 to 760 growing degree units on the base 50 model to hatch. So we are well past that time frame. Now is a good time, pre-tassel, to be getting out into the cornfields and digging up roots and kind of assessing how your plan worked for this past year. If you have a ton of feeding, be looking for the beetles to be out during tassel time frame and be having that insect plan put in with your fungicide plan if that's something that you're looking for. Because if you have a lot of root feeding right now, it's probably going to mean you're going to have a lot of beetles, which the bug bomb could be fairly effective if you're picking the peak beetle hatch time, which is typically either a little bit before, the window's typically a little bit before silking, through silking to a little bit after silking. So a VT R1 time frame of a fungicide insecticide pass could be very effective on the rootworm beetles.
It could be good on Japanese beetles too. We're saw a lot of white grubs in the fields, and now I see the first Japanese beetles coming out around the cedar trees and that kind of stuff. So keep an eye on that as we progress, because that can be something that unintentional or intentional problem as we progress toward it. It seems early, and if we get a big population of that, obviously that could be really bad for the silk clipping that's coming down the pipeline. So another one of those doom and gloom things we're seeing in the field, but I'm glad we're seeing it now because we can make a plan pushing forward. It's the part that stinks is when you've scouted, you've made the application, and then all of a sudden the silk clippers start really coming in. That makes it hard to swallow. But definitely take a look at that. Like I said, out in fields, there was a lot of the white grub, the Japanese beetles down on the ground. So I would expect to see them pretty in force here if we didn't drown them out. We give them a good washing here, but I doubt that. I'm sure we're going to see some problems with them.
Yeah, maybe this extra rainfall is going to be good for the rootworm beetles as well. Yep. So. Okay, Lynn, you gonna get us out of here with corny jokes? I know Joe set you up.
Yep. He sent some that Dylan and I had to laugh when we first got the email. We're like, I don't think we can probably say that one on there. So appreciate it, Joe. But we're gonna keep to the ones that are a little more PG here. I don't know if you know this, but when I lost the fingers on my right hand in a freak accident, I asked the doctor if I would still be able to write with it. He said probably, but I wouldn't count on it. And this one, Ben and I can relate to. Dylan, you're just gonna have to take our word for this one. When a kid says, "Daddy, I want mommy," that's the kid version of, "I'd like to speak to your supervisor."
Yep, that is for sure. I know that feeling. Okay, well, that wraps us up for this week. I hope everybody is safe. Hoping for a little bit of dry weather for the folks that need it, and some rain for the folks that need that as well in those areas. So the heat next week will keep things moving right along, and hopefully snap some of this stuff back in it and get everything back into decent shape. So
if we don't die of a heat stroke.
No, it'll be fine. So I hope everybody's safe, and we will catch you next week.